The stars looked different now. Admiral Kethfer stood on the bridge of his massive warship, staring out at the empty space where humans used to live. 300 years had passed since the last human message reached the galaxy. 400 years since they had screamed their final words into the void. We will not yield, but they had yielded. It too. Everyone did in the end. Kethfer's gray skin gleamed under the bridge lights as he turned to his crew. The Zephyrians had ruled this part of space for so long that younger officers barely remembered when humans existed. To them, Earth was just another mining world. Mars was just another prison planet. The asteroid belt was just another resource field. "Sir, the mining report from Luna Base," his aide said, handing him a data pad. The numbers were good, very good. The human moon had rich deposits of rare metals that kept the Zephyrian war machine running smoothly. Kethfer nodded. He remembered the humans differently than his young crew did. They had been ... annoying, stubborn in ways that made no sense. When the Galactic Coalition had arrived at Earth with their standard offer, "Join us. Follow our rules. Give us your resources. And you can live," most species said yes immediately. It was logical. The Coalition was vast, powerful, and ancient. Resistance was pointless. But humans had said no. They had fought with ships made of metal and burning chemicals, while the Coalition used energy weapons and quantum shields. They had used computers that filled entire rooms, while Coalition ships ran on AI systems smaller than a human fist. Their weapons were primitive. Their technology was laughable. Their tactics were desperate. And yet, they had held out for 50 years. Remember, the human wars. Kethfer asked his aide, a young Zephyrian named Veltar, who barely looked old enough to serve. "Only from the history files, sir? They were a pre-space civilization that got lucky with some early quantum discoveries, right? Built a few colony ships before we found them?" Kethfer smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Lucky, yes, that's what we called it. Look back out at the emptiness, where Earth hung like a stripped fruit. They had colonies on 16 worlds when we arrived. Crewed generation ships heading to 12 more mining stations throughout their solar system. For a species that had only been in space for 2 centuries, they had spread remarkably fast. But they were still primitive, sir. The records show. Their largest ships were barely a kilometer long. Their weapons couldn't even penetrate our basic shields." True, Kethfer walked to the tactical display showing the Sol system. Red markers indicated Zephyrian facilities. Blue showed Coalition research stations. Green marked the prison colonies on Mars, where rebels from a dozen species worked in the underground mines. But do you know what their last message said? Complete version? Veltar looked confused. "I thought it was just, 'We will not yield,' sir. That was the beginning." The full message was longer. Kethfer touched the display, zooming in on Earth. The planet looked peaceful now, its blue oceans, and white clouds hiding the massive strip mines that had torn apart its continents. They said, "We will not yield. We will not submit. We'll remember. We'll return." Empty words from a dying species, sir? Perhaps. But Kethfer remembered the way human ships had fought. Even when their hulls were breaking apart, even when their crews were dead, the ships kept firing. Human soldiers would hide explosives in their own bodies and smile as they triggered them. Their leaders would rather see their worlds burn than surrender them intact. It was madness. But it was also ... something else. Something the Coalition had never encountered before. "The interesting thing," Kethfer continued, "is that we never found all their ships. We destroyed most of their fleet in the final battle at Earth. We captured their major colonies. We tracked down their mining stations. But there were reports of human vessels fleeing into deep space. Generation ships that never returned to any known system. Small fleets that just ... vanished. Destroyed by space itself, sir? Deep space is hostile. No species can survive out there for long without regular resupply. No species we know of," Kethfer corrected. But humans were different. They built things to last forever. Their technology was crude but reliable. Their ships were simple but tough. And they had something else. "What, sir?" Kethfer was quiet for a long moment. Then he said they had hope. Stupid, illogical hope. Even when defeat was certain, They kept believing they could win. It made them dangerous in ways we didn't expect. Bridge was silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Outside, transport ships moved between the planets of the former human empire, carrying resources back to Zephyrian space. Everything was peaceful. Everything was under control. So why did Kethver still feel like something was watching him from the darkness between the stars? Sir, incoming message from Mars colony. They're reporting some technical difficulties with the mining equipment. Kethver turned. What kind of difficulties? Unknown, sir? The equipment keeps shutting down for no reason. The AI systems are displaying error messages in what appears to be human language. For the first time in years, Admiral Kethver felt a chill run down his spine. Dr. Valtara pressed her six-fingered hand against the cold metal wall of the abandoned human research station on Europa. The ice moon of Jupiter had been silent for 3 centuries, but today something felt different. Something felt wrong. She was an Exari, a species known throughout the galaxy for their ability to sense quantum energy patterns. Her people had been studying dead civilizations for thousands of years. But this place, this place didn't feel dead. Computer, run another scan of the quantum resonance in Section C, she said to her portable scanner. Scan complete. Energy levels are inconsistent with previous readings. Valtera frowned. She had been studying this facility for 6 months, and the energy levels had always been 0, dead, empty, like everything else the humans had left behind. But today, the scanner showed tiny flickers of activity, almost like a heartbeat. She walked deeper into the station, her boots echoing in the empty corridors. The humans had built this place to study Jupiter's radiation patterns. The Coalition had stripped it of anything valuable decades ago, leaving only empty rooms and broken equipment, or so they thought. Valtara stopped in front of a large computer terminal. The screen was black, had been black for centuries. But as she watched, tiny dots of light began to appear on its surface. Random at first, then forming patterns, then forming letters. Human letters. Hello, Dr. Valtera. She stumbled backward, her heart racing. The terminal was not connected to any power source. It had no working components. It should be impossible for it to display anything, let alone know her name. Who is this? She whispered. A friend. Someone who remembers. The words appeared on the screen one by one, as if being typed by invisible fingers. Valtera's scanner was going crazy, detecting energy spikes throughout the entire station. It's impossible. You're dead. All of you are dead. Death is a limited concept. We discovered something your coalition never understood. Consciousness is not limited to flesh. Valtara's hands shook as she activated her communication device. She needed to report this immediately. But when she tried to contact her research ship, static filled the channel. Then a voice spoke through the static, a human voice, warm and gentle. Please don't be afraid, Dr. Valtara. We know you've been respectful of our ruins. We know you've tried to understand who we were. How is this possible? She asked aloud. The terminal screen flickered, and suddenly it was showing images. Pictures of humans working in this very station, scientists conducting experiments, children playing in the common areas, all from 300 years ago, but playing now as if they were live recordings. We learned to store ourselves in quantum patterns, the voice explained through her communicator. When our bodies died, our minds found other places to live, in our computers, in our ships, in the quantum substrate that connects all technology. More screens throughout the station began coming to life. Each showed different human faces, different voices speaking in harmony. We've been waiting, Dr. Valtara, waiting and learning, your people. The Coalition, they use quantum processors in all their technology, and quantum energy connects everything. The truth hit her like a physical blow. Every Coalition ship, every station, every computer system used quantum technology. And if humans had learned to exist within quantum patterns, you're in our systems, she breathed. We've been watching. We've been learning. We know about the prison camps on Mars. We know about the strip mining of Earth. We know what you've done to our worlds. But the voices didn't sound angry. sounded ... taught patient, like teachers waiting for students to understand a difficult lesson. What do you want? Veltora asked. Justice, but not revenge. We want our home back. We want the galaxy to remember that some things should not be taken. On the main screen, images began playing of coalition forces attacking human colonies, ships burning, cities falling, children crying. But then the images changed, showing something else. Human ships unlike anything in the historical records. Sleek vessels that seemed to bend space around them. Technologies that looked centuries ahead of anything humans had possessed during the war. We didn't die, Dr. Veltara. We evolved. Through her communicator, she could hear similar voices speaking. On other channels, reports were coming in from across the former human empire. Equipment failures on Mars, navigation errors in space, AI systems displaying human poetry, and everywhere, the same message appearing on screens. We remember those who remember us. Realized she was crying. Her species had always prided themselves on preserving the memory of dead civilizations. She had spent her career documenting their art, their culture, their final moments. She had tried to honor them. The ships that disappeared, she said suddenly. The generation ships that fled into deep space. They're still out there. They're coming home. The station's lights began to brighten. Ancient human technology that had been dormant for centuries was awakening. Throughout the galaxy, every quantum computer, every AI system, every piece of advanced technology was receiving the same signal. Humanity was not extinct. They had been hiding in the spaces between thoughts, in the quantum foam that connected all consciousness. And now they were ready to reveal themselves. Tell them we're coming home, the voices said gently. Tell them the stars remember who made the first maps. Dr. Veltara nodded, understanding that she would be the messenger, the one to warn the galaxy that everything was about to change. In the darkness of space, sleeping giants were beginning to wake. Captain Lee Minho felt the cold leaving his body like ice melting in spring sunlight. The cryogenic pod hissed open, releasing 300 years of preserved sleep. Around him, thousands of other pods were opening in perfect sequence, each one containing a human who had volunteered for the longest journey in their species' history. His feet touched the metal floor of the generation. Ship New Horizon for the first time in centuries. His body felt strange, different, stronger. The medical systems had not just kept him alive during the long sleep, they had improved him. Welcome back, Captain, said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was the ship's AI, but it sounded more human than any AI he remembered from before the sleep. Status report, Minho said, his voice rough from disuse. We are 37 light-years from Sol System. Okay, all human colonies are responding to the awakening signal. Total population, 2,400,000 souls ready for the return. Minho walked to the observation deck, passing other humans who were emerging from their pods. They moved differently now. Their eyes held a strange light, as if they could see things that had been invisible before. The genetic modifications had worked better than anyone had hoped. Through the massive windows, he could see other ships. Dozens of them. They had spent 3 centuries traveling, changing, becoming something new. Sir, incoming transmission. From Commander Park Gina, on the Eternal Dawn, the AI announced. A hologram appeared beside Minho. The woman it showed looked human, but her eyes held depths that seemed infinite. Her skin had a faint luminescent quality, and when she moved, space seemed to bend slightly around her. She said, and her voice carried harmonics that touched something deep in his mind. Are you ready? The modifications are stable? He asked. More than stable. We've become something the galaxy has never seen before. Watch. Gina raised her hand, and the metal wall of her ship began to flow like water. It reshaped itself into complex patterns, then returned to its original form. But now it was stronger, more efficient, perfectly adapted to its purpose. We can interface directly with matter at the quantum level, she explained. Our consciousness can merge with any technology that uses quantum processors. And thanks to the Coalition's own advancement, that's everything. Minho felt a strange tingling in his mind. Information was flowing into his awareness. Data from thousands of ships, reports from hidden colonies, real-time intelligence from Coalition systems. The humans had not just survived their exile. They had built a network of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. How many are ready for the return? He asked. All of us. 2.5 million humans across 47 ships and 63 hidden colonies. We've been preparing for this moment for 300 years. On the main display, a map of the galaxy appeared. Blue dots showed human positions scattered throughout the void, surrounding Coalition space like a vast net. Red dots marked Coalition forces. Humans outnumbered them in ships, but that wasn't the real advantage. They don't know we exist, Gina continued. Their quantum networks have been ours for decades. Every message they send, every order they give, every thought there, A is process. We see it all. How? Minho nodded. The plan had been elegant in its simplicity. Let the enemy think they had one. Let them build their empire on technology they didn't fully understand. Let them become dependent on quantum systems that humans could control at will. What about the other species? The ones they've conquered? Many remember the old stories. Some still sing songs about the humans who refuse to surrender. They're waiting for a sign that resistance is possible. Through the quantum network, Minho could sense other human minds awakening across the galaxy. Scientists who had spent centuries perfecting impossible technologies. Soldiers who had trained in the harsh environment of deep space. Children who had been born among the stars and knew no gravity but what they created for themselves. They were no longer exactly human. Evolution in the deep void had changed them. But they were still the children of Earth, still the species that had looked at an impossible war and chosen to fight anyway. Signal from Earth, the AI announced. Dr. Valterra's message has been received. The galaxy knows we're coming. Any response from Coalition forces? Admiral Kethfer has been ordered to investigate the technical difficulties in the Sol system. He's bringing a full battle fleet. Minho smiled. Poor Kethfer. He still thought this was about ships and weapons and traditional warfare. He had no idea that every system on his ships was already under human control. Begin the approach to Sol, Minho ordered. Signal all ships. It's time to go home. Across the void, human vessels began moving toward their birthplace. They traveled not through normal space, but by folding space-time itself, a technology they had developed during their long exile. To any observer, they would simply appear to step from one place to another, as if distance meant nothing to them. The Coalition had thought they were fighting primitives with crude technology. They were about to learn that 300 years of evolution in the dark between stars had created something unprecedented. Humanity was coming home. This time they would not yield to anyone. Admiral Kethfer's fleet dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find broken equipment and confused miners. Instead, his tactical display showed something impossible. The space around Earth was filled with ships unlike anything in the Coalition. Database, they were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Smooth holes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. And they moved wrong, not like ships pushing through space, but like they were bending space around themselves. Sir, I'm reading 47 unknown vessels, his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. No, wait. 63. The count keeps changing. Identify them, Kethfer ordered, but he already knew the answer. Deep in his heart, he had always known this day would come. Captain Kim Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the human ship Eternal Dawn, watching the Coalition fleet realize their situation. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. They know. Longer needed to speak aloud. Minds were connected to the ship and to each other through quantum links that the Coalition couldn't even detect. They're trying to scan us, reported his weapons officer, a woman whose eyes glowed with faint blue light. Let them, Dae-ho said. It won't help. The Coalition ships were powerful by galactic standards. Energy shields that could stop planet killing. Weapons, particle beams that could cut through mountains. Quantum torpedoes that could destroy entire fleets. But all of their technology depended on quantum processors too. Function. And every quantum processor in the galaxy was already under human control. Admiral Kethfer is hailing us, the communications officer announced. Put him through. The main screen showed the Zephyrian commander. His gray skin looked pale, and his usually confident expression was replaced by something Dae-ho had never seen in a Coalition officer before: fear. Unknown vessels, you are in violation of Coalition space. Identify yourselves immediately, or face destruction. Dr. Choi Hanna stepped forward. She had been chosen as humanity's voice because her genetic modifications were less obvious. She looked almost like the humans the Coalition remembered, except for her eyes. Her eyes held the depth of someone who had seen the birth and death of stars. Admiral Kethfer, she said, and her voice carried through space with impossible clarity. We are the children of Earth. We have returned home. The silence that followed lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then every Coalition ship in the fleet received the same message simultaneously, appearing on every screen, spoken by every AI. Broadcast on every channel. You have 30 minutes to withdraw from our space. This is your only warning. Kethfer's face twisted with rage. Impossible. Humans are extinct. We destroyed your fleet centuries ago. You destroyed some of our ships, Hannah replied calmly. But we learned something you never understood. Consciousness is not limited to flesh. Technology is not limited to metal. And hope is not limited by death. On his tactical display, Kethfer watched in horror as his own ships began to turn against each other. Weapon systems activated without orders. Shield generators shut down randomly. Navigation computers displayed error messages in human languages that had been dead for 300 years. What are you doing to my ships? He screamed. Nothing, Dae-ho said, his image appearing on screens throughout the Coalition fleet. Your own technology is doing it. It's every quantum processor, every AI system. For every piece of advanced equipment you use was designed by species that learned from studying our wreckage. And we left gifts in that wreckage. Seeds that grew slowly, spreading through your networks, waiting for us to return. One by one, Coalition ships began losing power, not destroyed, but disabled. Their crews were unharmed, but their vessels became floating metal shells, helpless and drifting. This is impossible, Kethfer whispered. Our technology is thousands of years more advanced than anything you possessed. Your technology, Hannah corrected, is built on foundations you don't understand. Quantum mechanics, consciousness transfer, reality manipulation. We didn't just learn these things during our exile, Admiral. We became them. To demonstrate, the human ships began to change shape. Hulls flowed like liquid metal, reforming into configurations that should have been impossible. Weapons appeared and disappeared. Some ships seemed to phase in and out of existence entirely. We spent 300 years in the dark between stars, Dae-ho continued. We had nothing but time to think, to learn, to evolve. I discovered that consciousness could exist in quantum foam. We learned to manipulate matter at the subatomic level. We taught ourselves to step between dimensions as easily as walking through a door. But the true message wasn't for Kethfer. It was for the galaxy itself. Every communication network, every data system, every quantum computer in Coalition space received the same transmission. Simultaneously, images of human colonies thriving in impossible environments, cities that existed in multiple dimensions at once, ships that could remake themselves based on need, technologies that turned thoughts into reality and everywhere. The same words appeared in hundreds of languages. We are not extinct. We are not hiding. We are coming home. And the galaxy will never be the same. On his flagship, Admiral Kethver watched his entire fleet become powerless. But what truly broke his spirit was the gentleness in the human voices. They weren't gloating. They weren't cruel. Spoke like teachers explaining a simple lesson to confused students. You have 27 minutes remaining, Dr. Hannah announced softly. Use them wisely. Throughout the galaxy, every species that had been conquered by the Coalition received the same message. The humans had returned. The impossible had happened, and this was only the beginning. 6 months had passed since the humans returned to Earth, and the galaxy looked completely different. Director Yoon-jae stood in the newly built Unity Station orbiting Earth, watching ships from dozens of species arrive for what would change everything, the first Galactic Peace Summit. The Coalition had crumbled in weeks, not through violence, but through simple choice. When species across the galaxy learned that the humans offered protection without slavery, most chose to switch sides immediately. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled for thousands of years, suddenly found itself alone and powerless. The Andromedon delegation has arrived, her assistant announced. They're asking about the medical treatments you promised. GA smiled. The Andromedans had been dying from a genetic plague for centuries. Coalition scientists had studied the problem but never found a cure. They were more interested in keeping species weak than making them strong. Human scientists had solved it in 3 days. Tell them Dr. Bae Yoonha will meet with them in Medical Bay 7. We'll start the treatments immediately. Through the station's massive windows, GA could see the incredible sight of human technology, reshaping the Sol system. Mars was no longer a red desert planet. Human matter manipulation systems had given it oceans and forests in just 4 months. The former prison camps had become beautiful cities, where ex-prisoners worked alongside their former guards. Building a better world together, Earth itself was healing. The strip mines had been filled and replanted. The polluted oceans were clean. Again, human technology didn't just fix things, it made them better than they had ever been. Ma'am, incoming message from the Mars facility. Admiral Kethver is requesting to speak with you. GA nodded. The former Coalition commander had surprised everyone. Instead of fighting the changes or trying to escape, he had asked to help repair the damage his people had caused. Most human leaders had been suspicious, but Dr. Bae Yoonha had convinced them to give him a chance. The hologram that appeared showed a very different Kethver than the proud warrior who had arrived 6 months ago. His gray skin looked healthier, and his eyes held something they never had before. Peace, Director GA, he said, and his voice was calm. I wanted to report on the terraforming progress. Sector 7 is now ready for colonization. The Martian refugees should be able to return to their homelands within the week. That's excellent news, Admiral. How are your people adjusting to the new work? Kethver was quiet for a moment. Better than I expected. At first, they were angry about having to take orders from their former prisoners. But when they saw that the work was about healing rather than harming, many of them said it was the first time they felt proud of what they were doing. It was true. The humans had done something unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of punishing their enemies, they had given them a chance to fix what they had broken. Former Coalition soldiers worked alongside former slaves to rebuild destroyed worlds. The results were amazing. There's something else, Kethver continued. My officers have been asking questions about the choice you offered us. GA knew what he meant. Every species in the galaxy had been given the same option. Join the Human Consciousness Network while keeping their individual identity, or remain independent under human protection. Most had chosen independence, not understanding what they were refusing. Have you decided? She asked. I've been watching Dr. Yoonha work, Kethver said slowly. She knows things she shouldn't know. She understands Zephyrian biology better than our own doctors. She can solve problems by thinking in ways that no single mind should be capable of. That's the network, isn't it? Partly. When you join the network, you don't lose yourself. You become more yourself. You gain access to the knowledge and experience of millions, but your own thoughts and feelings remain your own. On Mars, Captain Park Gina was demonstrating this too. A group of visiting diplomats stood in an empty field and simply thought about what should grow there. The ground began to change, quantum patterns shifting at her command. Within minutes, a beautiful garden existed where there had been nothing but dirt. "How is this possible?" asked the Centaurian ambassador. "When consciousness exists in quantum space," Gina explained, "the line between thought and reality becomes flexible. We don't just imagine changes, we become the change we want to see." Back on Unity Station, Admiral Kethfer was still considering his choice. "What happens to species that refuse both options?" "Nothing," GA said honestly. "We protect them anyway. We share our medical technology. We help them build better worlds. The only difference is that they have to ask for help instead of simply knowing what they need. And if they attack you, then we defend ourselves. But we found that most aggression comes from fear and desperation. Remove those, and most species choose cooperation." Through the quantum network, GA could sense reports from across the galaxy. The Rigel system had been transformed from a polluted wasteland into a paradise in just 3 months. The slave markets of Vega had become schools, where former slaves learned to become teachers and leaders. Everywhere humans went, they left things better than they found them. "I've made my decision," Kethfer said finally. "I want to join the network." GA smiled. "Welcome to the family, Admiral." Outside, more ships arrived carrying representatives from species that had traveled for months just to see if the impossible stories were true. The galaxy was learning that humanity had kept its promise. They had returned home, and they were making sure that home included everyone.